wanted to make a quick little video to show you how I'm using drum racks at the minute. I initially wanted to make this for a friend of mine to give him an example of how I was using them. Not been using drum racks long, got to admit. It's probably been about a week, maybe, that I've been actually really delving into how you can use drum racks. But I couldn't find a video that really demonstrated what it was that I wanted to show in a kind of succinct fashion, and I didn't want to link up like, oh, have a look through these half a dozen videos and take up, like half an hour of your time or whatever. So I'm going to show you how I'm using drum racks here within Ableton Live 10. I'm using Ableton Live 10 Lite. It's the free version that you can get. If you've seen other videos on the channel, then you've seen Koala, and there's a chance that you've probably picked that up. If you have, you can get a copy of Ableton Live 10 Lite through Koala for free. It's limited by the fact that you've got only 8 audio MIDI channels. Audio and MIDI channels. You can have whatever configuration you want. You could have 1 MIDI and 7 audio, vice versa, whatever configuration, but a maximum of 8 channels. Which may seem like it's a limiting thing. However, I'm going to drop this drum rack onto the MIDI track, and you can see, so we've got 16 pads there, so that's 16 cells, but that's repeated multiple times, which means that we've actually got 132 cells. I could put one of those on each of the 8 channels that I'm allowed, which is 8 lots of 132 cells, obviously. So that's 8 lots of 132 individual sounds. I reckon I'm good. I'm going to show you how powerful that actually is. Just to give you a quick demonstration of how I've been using the drum racks. I've got a 4-bar loop. So I've got a 4-bar loop of drums and bass there. I'm going to drop the drums in onto this audio track, and all I want to do is I want to chop these up. So I'm going to, if you right click, obviously you can split, get rid of these ones, I don't need those. Just want to take literally 1 bar. I'm going to actually use the keyboard shortcuts, so I'm just using Control and E because I'm on Windows. Now if I go to the channel that we've got the drum rack on, so that I'm selected on that channel, then I can just literally drag and drop these little clips that I've made here. So that one's a kick, so I'm going to rename them as we go. So it's kick 1, this one's obviously, this one's a hi-hat, closed hi-hat, so let's stick that in there. Keep doing that. And then this one's a snare. For the purposes of this, that's fine. Usually I'd be populating this with a whole different array of things, but just for the purpose of this demonstration, that'll do is fine. So I don't need that anymore. So I've actually got that already muted. It doesn't matter, but we don't need that to play, so I can actually delete that completely. And then we want to, I'm just going to zoom out so that I can make a piano roll clip with those in. Now, really simple. So kick, snare, kick, snare. That one's a hi-hat, and then we'll put hi-hats in the middle of each of those. Okay, so that's a really simple way of just throwing your samples in there and getting working with it. Once the samples are in there, there's an awful lot that you can actually do with them. So for example, if I'm going to go on the kick here, first of all, I can zoom in, drag that and zoom in so I can see where that is. If I wasn't happy with where that had clipped, where I'd actually taken it from, I can obviously change that, change the whole bit there. As it is, it's fine because it pretty much drops on beat, so that's okay. But what I can do, I'll put the filter, this filter here, I'm going to hit the filter and drop the frequency all the way off, and you'll hear I'm going to so that gives us a different feel already for the kick. Now if I do the same for the close hi-hat, you can see we've got a low pass. I'm going to put a high pass on there. So then if I okay, so we've got a different feel there. what else can we do with it? So on the individual sample controls, one of the things I totally love about the drum rack is I can grab this LFO here, and then I can use that. So if I put it on the most that I can get it, and I put it on a random sample and hold sort of style, and then I apply that. Now that I've got this LFO, I can use that to modulate automatically at any of these settings. So if I grab, for example, the filter, now when we're playing it, see how the filter's being affected by this, so it gives a little bit of life to it. I could also do it to the pan if I wanted. I could do it to the pitch. See, more or less dense. Don't want to do it to the pitch, just want to leave it with the filter for now. Okay, so what else can we do? Well, if we come back to the mixer window, if I expand this drum rack, first of all I've got the kick, the hi-hat and the snare. I can add individual effects to those. So for example, for the snare, if I go for a plugin, I might want to run that through, let's say I want to run it through reverb. Now, I really like this plate reverb here, so I'm going to drop that on it. So you can see that's affected just that snare and not the rest of it. Now you can also do groups within that. So just like you can on, if I wanted to make a group out of these two here, and I can group those. Obviously don't particularly want to do that, but I could do it here. Let's say I wanted to apply effects to the hi-hat and the snare, but I don't want to do it to the kick. I can make a little subgroup in there. So now I can put my filters, for example, if I grabbed Decimot and I dropped that on this little group there. Let's do something that's quite strong. So vintage sampler, strong. Let's do the low. In fact, yeah, that's fine. We'll do the lo-fi. So that's those affected. Maybe I want to do it on the kick as well, but I wanted to do a different setting, so I can drop Decimot onto there. And on the kick, let's say I wanted to do a vintage sampler. And I wanted to do strong, but I wanted to do the Covox. Okay, so we've had a look at that. We've got the, we're going back to the arrangement here. As you can see, it's a really simple drum beat still, but we've got various things that we can do with it in here. So we've looked at the filter, we've looked at the LFO, how we've used those to effectively liven up the sample a little bit. If you click on this, sorry, on the, I don't need that one yet. Oh, sorry, if I click on that, so this shows the chain, and you can add in send and return effects, which I'll not bother doing right now because it's not really what I'm trying to demonstrate. But you can also do choke groups. So you can have a sample be in mono. Now, perhaps not all that effective for the drums, because I want the drums to be playing, overlapping the drums is exactly what I want to achieve. But if I have another drum rack, bearing in mind, it's called a drum rack, but you don't have to just use it for drums. I'll drop this on the second channel here. Now, if I go back to how I was doing this with the audio, go back to where that was, and there was a bass in there. So I'm going to come right in. Actually, that looks like it's not hitting where it probably should. So the loop might be a little bit off. Or maybe that's what I intended, I'm not sure. Right, I'm going to just take one of these. And in my new drum rack, I'm going to drop that in there. So I've got, that's the first note. Now if I wanted to duplicate that, I can just drag it over to the next one. What I didn't look at with the drums, because it's not all that interesting, is I can actually transpose it. So for this one now, if I wanted to, I could just drop that by. So now I've got 2 bass notes. Obviously I don't need that anymore, so I'm going to mute it. Going to come back out again and create my piano roll element. So then I've got a bit of confusion because they're both called the same thing. I'm going to come back in here. So change it to bass note 1, rename that bass note 2. Now, when they play and overlap, they're going to distort, and that's not going to be something that we want. So, if I come into the piano roll again, I'm wanting them to cut off. So if I do what I did before, so I've clicked on I've expanded this to get to the choke groups. If I make them both choke group 1, when the second one hits, it'll cut off the first one. See? So I'm going to turn it off again. It's still running when that one, so then I have to make it monophonic on the choke group. Perfect. And obviously I can copy that as many times as I want. I can do exactly the same with the LFO tricks. There's various other things you can do. I can obviously, if I wanted to do the LFO, and I wanted to do it for the pitch for this one. There's various things that you can do, really get into it, but just to give you a quick example, this is just some of the ways that I use it. So let's quickly on the drums, quickly on the bass line there, and then I hope that was useful. There's loads more videos out there. There's people who know this stuff inside out and will explain it much better than I have, and in much more detail about all the other things. People have done multiple series about, getting really in, going in on what all these different things are. They're relatively self-explanatory. I would totally advise you to kind of get stuck in there and just sort of mess about and see what does what. You can always backtrack. You can always, Control Z or undo or whatever if you've done something that's gone horrifically wrong. Just roll your sleeves up and have fun with it. Bottom line is, there's loads and loads to be doing with the drum racks. They're incredible, so have some fun.